Hi, welcome to another edition of Recent Reads. And I finished 3 books, which means it's time to talk about those books. Anyway, let's start with the first one. This book was something that I finished before I moved to KL, which is where I am right now. Pilar Quintana's The Bitch. And this book was originally written in Spanish. It was translated into English by Dillman. And it was a really short book. I guess it could count as shorty September. And usually with short books, I tend to have this kind of, dissatisfaction, because sometimes short books can feel kind of too short that they feel thin. Maybe either the story feels thin or the characters feel thin. They're not enough. But I think The Bitch is quite packed. It is quite packed with so many things. It's packed with characterization, with ideas, with story, and also with emotional punch. Right? So yeah, I forgot. What is The Bitch about? So this short novel is about this woman who lives on a bluff off the coast of the Pacific coast in Colombia. So Pilar Quintana is a Colombian writer. Now, this woman, her name is Damaris, and she lives there on this bluff at a village, seaside village, with her husband. And right at the beginning, we learned that this couple can't conceive. They have no children, and they've tried already. They gave a lot of effort, going to see doctors and stuff, but they just can't have children. And so it was one of the frustrations that this woman Damaris is experiencing in her life. And she is she's extremely frustrated by that, because she really wants to have children. So one day she finds a woman who is selling puppies, and she decides to get herself one of the puppies, a female puppy, and she really dotes on that puppy. She loves it. She takes care of that puppy. So it's kind of like she's transferring this maternal energy from a baby that she couldn't have onto this puppy. So there's that thing going on in here. But eventually this story would develop this relationship between Damaris and her puppy into something that is a bit more obsessive, a bit more negative, right? And this is where the story really kicks off. Now, alongside with this plot that explores the relationship between Damaris and this puppy, we also learn more about Damaris's past, about how she grew up in poverty, how her family life hasn't been a really stable one. She's raised by, if I'm not mistaken, by her grandparents. So her own parents basically weren't there, and already she had this kind of very difficult upbringing. And there was one thing that happened also in her past that she thinks she has already kind of moved on from, but obviously from the story and how the story would eventually unfold, she hasn't moved on from this particular big traumatic experience that happened in her childhood. And towards the end of this book, everything is going to be tied up together nicely. You know, there's her childhood, her personality, her current state of living, the poverty that she has right now with her husband, her childlessness, the puppy, that big traumatic event in the past. All of those things are going to converge in a way at the end. And I think the way that all of those elements are written together towards the end, it feels nice. It's not too neat. But I really like the progression of Damaris's character in this book. Now, one thing I want to add about this book is that it can be quite graphic when it comes to depiction of animal cruelty. So if you are not comfortable with animal cruelty, portrayal of it in any kind, maybe this book is not for you. So I'm just gonna warn you guys in advance, because this book is absolutely brutal. It is, oh my gosh, it is insane when it comes to that. So I just kind of want to tell you guys in advance about that. Now, while I was reading this book, I was also kind of I like how the author just sort of injects this idea about destiny, about fate, about external circumstances, especially in this book, where you can sort of get some veiled commentaries on poverty, social injustices, class struggles definitely happens here too. You know, there is a bit of colorism and racism thing going on in here, being mentioned, injected in the into the story. I think those ideas are incorporated really nicely into the story, and they are not done in a way that is forced, but it feels natural, and it complements the progression of the main character really well. So yeah, for a short book, I think it's very punchy. It has that sort of near epic feel at the end, or maybe that's just me, but it has that vibe going on at the end. Not gonna spoil you about what happens at the end, but I liked it. So yeah, that's all I want to say about The Bitch. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Now, moving on to the second book I read, it was by Anita Brookner. It's called Look at Me. So this would be the second Anita Brookner that I picked up. I've always been meaning to pick up more Anita Brookner since I read Hotel du Lac in 2020, so that was like 3 years ago. But I ended up loving Look at Me so much. This book was wonderful. 5 out of 5 stars. Probably one of the best books I read this year. So I'm just going to tell you guys that before I continue raving about it. And I feel like it's nice the fact that I read it now as opposed to like earlier. I mean, I could have read it earlier if I had decided to pick this book up earlier, but you know. But in any case, I read it and I loved it. Now, what is this book about? Look at Me is about this woman of unknown age. Her name is Frances Hinton, and she lives she doesn't live by herself. She lives with a maid, and she works at a research library. And so basically her life just pretty much revolved around working at this library and going back home in the evening, and she pretty much just does this most days in a week, right? She also has a hobby, and she's a writer. So when she goes back home, she would write. So this is pretty much her life. It is characterized as something that is kind of dull, boring. She doesn't have much social life. She is in a okay, distant, strictly professional relationship with the people that she meets at work, which aren't a lot. Like, there aren't many people that she encounters at work, but she's in an okay relationship with them, but she's not like tight with her colleagues. So social life is something that she really lacks. And she really wants to have an active social life. It is something that she admires in people. And so when she encounters a magnetic couple, Nick and Alex Fraser, she is bedazzled by how charming and charismatic this couple is. And when this couple take notice of her and they decide to sort of adopt her into her social circle, she is obviously happy, but also she realizes that she would have to adjust into this new situation where she would have to like engage with this couple in their social activities, their dinners, their parties, their outings, and all that stuff. And Frances, being someone who is introverted, she struggles a bit, but at the same time, because she has this deep admiration towards this really social couple with really awesome social life, she's trying to like really get herself into that circle so that hopefully maybe some of those social dazzle charm would rub off on her and she would become like one of those social people as well. And so that's pretty much what this book is about. It's about her going into the social circle of Alex and Nick Fraser and basically, in the most general terms, learn more about herself. This book is about loneliness. It is about how one perceives oneself, like how you would feel that how one perceives oneself in terms of one's self-esteem, and how that would pretty much affect how we perceive other people as well. And I find this is the point that I resonate really well. Like at one point, this novel talk about how Frances is really anxious about one particular day in a week. I think it was Friday, or it was Sunday. I can't remember. But it was one day of the week that she was really anxious about because that was the day she would feel the loneliest. Like there are no activities that she could engage herself with. There are no other people that she could go out with or hang out with and stuff. I find that Anita Brookner writes these tiny details, this minutia of loneliness really well. It's not just like pretty much just showing us a character and tell us that yeah, she's lonely. She doesn't have friends. Today she does this, tomorrow she does that. She does so in a very precise, surgical way, really showing us how the extent of how lonely Frances is, and how internally at the same time she is also trying to justify her loneliness. She's trying to sort of protect herself by saying that this is her life, she's okay with it, she's fine. But as readers, we are the third party looking at her. We know that she's not fine. But yeah, it's the way that the author approaches this and allows us to think that, and I don't know, possibly with some readers allowing them to also reflect on themselves based on how they look at Francis, I think this book was written superbly. Now, this is a slow book, so it might not work with readers who prefer something fast-paced. It is also very introspective, a lot of reflection, a lot of internal thoughts going on, a lot of details on those aspects. So yeah, if you are a very plot-heavy person, you might not find this book really engaging. But for me personally, I think this book engages me on a very, very personal level. And I think nowadays, I feel like this book is also quite relevant because we hear a lot about how people talk about loneliness, right? The awareness when it comes to loneliness and to a bigger scope, mental health issues. The awareness is it's gaining more and more visibility, and I feel like this book is kind of one of those books that portray loneliness in a way that is non-judgmental. And but yeah, this book is not known by a lot of people, so I wish that it is more known by people. I really recommend this book to you guys. See, the portrayal of mental health, I would say, in this book is just really wonderful. Anyway, moving on to the third book that I just finished, it would be this one. I have a copy right here, We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, and this book was originally in Russian. It was translated into English by Natasha, Randall. I mentioned about a book that I read before, The Aerodrome by Rex Warner, which was also part of this really cool vintage future series. And if you missed that video, you might not know, or if you don't know about this vintage future series, you might not know about this fact. It has this really nice plastic thingy that you could overlay on top of this cover. I'm not sure what you call this effect. I think it's moire or something like that, or maybe there's a better name for it. But anyway, it's really cool. You can see the letters are kind of like wiggling in there. It's fun to, it's fun to play. I also have other books with this cover under this collection, but I don't have them with me. That's a shame, but I'll have a reunion with those books maybe one day in the future. But anyway, I have this cover with the wiggly letters. But anyway, the story itself is not wiggly, right? Different vibe. Very gray, very drab and rigid and cold, or at least that's what I got from this book. Anyway, We is about this chief engineer named D503. I think that's his name, D503. He's a citizen of this place called the One State, and he's an engineer, and he's in charge of the building of this spaceship called the Integral. And apparently the Integral is going to be like of tremendous use to the One State. The One State is really wants this spaceship to be built. Now, when you hear the name of the place that he lives in, it's called the One State, right? You can already get this vibe that it's not a fun, happy place. Basically, what goes on in the One State is that the citizens are constantly under surveillance. They live in apartments made of glass, so everyone can see what's going on inside their apartments all the time. They have this impersonal visits, I would say sexual visits or something like that, where basically the people they don't date people randomly, but rather they are assigned with dates. They are assigned with partners. And so apparently one of the logic according to this book is that if you sort of eliminate things like love and feelings and stuff, you're gonna be able to eliminate things like, you know, jealousy, envy, the things that could cause unhappiness and war and stuff. You know, I'm going really general here, but that's kind of like the idea of that whole impersonal visit thing. But anyway, that's kind of like the life of the citizens in the one state. They are uniform in a sense that everyone is kind of like everyone else. Individuality, things like imagination and dreams, creativity, those things are considered as aberrations, you know, disease, mental illness, so not encouraged. So as you can see, living in one state is not really chummy. And D503 is a character, is our protagonist, who is in principle, he's a good citizen. He's trying to embody the principle that the one state is teaching its citizens. Like, he's a good guy. He follows all the rules, right? Until one day, D503 encounters an enigmatic woman named I330. And after this encounter, he is kind of mesmerized by this woman, but at the same time, he is also repulsed by her, because this woman, in a way, she lives in defiance to whatever the one state is, you know, is championing. This woman, she shamelessly flirts with D503. She smokes, I think. She does a lot of things that are kind of considered as immoral by the standards of the one state. And D503 is starting to freak out because he is mesmerized by this woman, and he's starting to experience dreams. Oh my gosh. And so that's basically the conflict that D503 is having in this novel. Like, what will come out of that conflict? And that's the question. What will happen to, you know, what will happen to the relationship between these two characters? How will it develop along the course of the story? So, this book is, a lot of people consider this book to be kind of like a inspiration. Well, I mean, it is an inspiration of 1984. And there's definitely that similar vibe with 1984. Like when I read 1984, I also had that drab, gray, gloomy, hazy vibe to it as well. You know, very similar. There's a bit of that. You know, there's also that surveillance element to it also. Total. Oh my gosh, I'm stuck right now. I'm gonna avoid that word for a while. I don't know what's happening to me. Anyway, you know what that word is. The total ism. I'm not sure what's wrong with my tongue right now. But yeah, has those elements in it. I would say we has these ideas that are really really interesting and engaging. I find that when I was reading I really like this idea about how I330, this woman, she says that there is no final revolution, just as there is no final number. Totalitarianism. Oh. Anyway, back. Yeah, so I330 thinks that there is no final revolution because there is no final number. And I find this idea really interesting because it's so obvious, but you never thought of that. I never thought of it before reading this book. I never thought of it before I saw the video by Dead Lizard Reads. Okay, I'm gonna have her channel linked down below. But I just find that idea to be really interesting because in a way kind of it really is applicable to what we are experiencing right now in real life also. I don't know, I just have that kind of connection and it just sort of sparks. Anyway, I really like that idea that this book is putting forward. I really like how this book also talks about, you know, believing in something just because like lots of other people are believing in the same thing doesn't mean that it's true, you know. What is the cost of freedom, right? Versus what is the cost of having something dictating what we believe in. You know, there's always this kind of balance between a more paternalistic rule versus a more freedom given to people to decide whatever they want to do in their lives. You know, the balance of it all. And I guess we can say that in there's it goes more on the rule, zero on freedom, right? And so I like these ideas. They aren't new ideas though, but I like how this book just sort of weaves those ideas into the story. Now, as for the writing itself, the book is written in this kind of journal format, and in a way it detracts a little bit from the reading experience, but at the same time I also feel like it improves at least on the tone of the book. Like, okay, how does it detract? It feels kind of distracting in a way because it is not deliberately written as a novel, as a story, and so that it doesn't feel polished. It feels like someone's writing into the diary, and so a lot of descriptions, a lot of information just being dumped there. It has a bit of disjointed feel to it, which makes this book feel kind of challenging. So when I said detract a little bit, I just meant it was a bit challenging, you know. So don't get me wrong, I don't think that the writing itself is sucks. It just felt a little bit more challenging. Although to me, it was challenging in the sense that it also decreased a little bit of my enjoyment. But that is fine, because at the same time, you know, when you consider how it looks, you know, the form of this novel being something that's written as a series of journal entries, it also lends itself to a stronger voice, voice. It feels unique. It feels more intimate because now we are reading journal entries and we are reading the direct voice of the character. D503 is the narrator of this book. And so in terms of the tone and the voice of this book, that form makes it a little bit stronger. So in conclusion, it is challenging, but I think it's a good kind of challenging, although I did enjoy it a bit less. But I feel like, this is the kind of book that I didn't necessarily enjoy while I was reading. It wasn't a page turner, but it's the kind of book that would make you think, and you feel happy that you have read it. You gain something from it, and you can't have all books to be page turners, right? Some books are there, when you read it, they're really boring, or they're really not jiving with your taste, but eventually, you know, maybe a decade after you read this book, you feel like that book kind of informed you on some of your beliefs at that time, or it changed you in a way, or taught you something, you know, those kind of sappy stuff, you know. Anyway, yeah, those are my thoughts about We. And with that, I'm going to conclude this video. Those are all the 3 books that I've finished so far. I've not read any other books. I've not finished any other books yet. And I'll return to you guys in a new video after this. If I do have any ideas, new ideas or whatever, I'll return to you guys. But yeah, I'm going to stop this video now. If you have any comments, just feel free to leave them down below. Anything you want to talk about. I'm using a hair product right now. Do you look at my hair? Oh. Anyway, I'm just joking. Or am I? Anyway, I'll see you again in a new video. So until then, take care. Thanks for watching and bye.